Welcome back to another episode of CFO Chronicles. We have an amazing guest joining us today from Amber Sky Marketing, Jeremy Estey. Jeremy and I get into all of the strategy around local search when it comes to Google for accounting firms, national search, how to use Google Ads, PPC, what to target, how to think about the key phrases you want to use to get in front of your ideal client, and where to start when it comes to a marketing budget. As always, hope you enjoy the episode and let us know your thoughts. Tell me a little bit about kind of where you guys are coming in and how you help your clients with Google Ads. Because it's my understanding the PPC, pay-per-click, is a big piece of your strategy to get your clients the results they're looking for. Or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, no, we definitely have a PPC component, Google Ads component. We're also doing search engine optimization. I can definitely speak to both. Um, where Google's headed right now, obviously they're putting a lot of weight on their search ads and just their ads in general, because that's where the bulk of their revenue is coming from. So they're obviously making those a priority. The good thing about Google Ads and kind of why I really like them is because they are super intent based, right? As opposed to, Facebook ads, which are still great for, specific purposes, more of like a branding play. Whereas, if you're on Facebook, you're not necessarily looking for services. You're just on there seeing what's going on. You're scrolling. And if you come across, an ad that might be relevant to you and it, entices you to click, you'll click and you'll get more information. Whereas, Google Ads, for example, if I am an accounting firm, let's just say, or I guess maybe let's use it from, you know, an accounting firm client. If I'm looking for an accounting firm, I'm going to Google because I mean that's where most people are starting their searches, and for the most part, people who are doing searches on Google, they have a pretty high intent to buy, or at least they're in that part of the buying stage where they're actively trying to get more information. So they're going to type in essentially what they're looking to do, and if it's super like high intent that they want to they want to build a new accounting relationship, they're going to type in best accountant near me, or, who can help me with my cash flow issues as a small business owner, right? So, using those types of keywords, that's really where, PPC in this case, which stands for pay per click, Google search ads really, really make sense because the moment you essentially pay for Google Ads, you're getting one of the top placements. So you're essentially renting the top space. Whereas if you look at it from a search engine optimization standpoint, Google has, started to push the organic rankings down. And so, it's not as front and center as it used to be. Whereas, Google Ads, oh, okay, this accounting firm is coming up. They're right in front of me, and I really don't have to do any scrolling. So that's why they are super effective, for driving new business, driving new conversations. And essentially, how they work is it's similar to search engine optimization, where you're analyzing keywords, trying to understand what keywords are going to make the most sense based on your specific client and, the challenges they're trying to solve. And I think that's another piece of it we can talk about later. But being able to position your firm, understand who your clients are, what problems are you solving, and then building out, your marketing strategy based on that. And then that's where, you can get really, really refined with your Google ads and just who you're trying to target.
I love what you're saying about the intent level. It's so true. A lot of people at the event were asking me, oh, hey, or telling me, hey, I'm listed here on Angie's List, or I'm doing that. Okay, great. How often are you going to Angie's List to look
Yeah.
for a service? Like you're not doing that. You're going to Google. So hang out where your potential clients are going to be, where they're surging. Um, when it comes to firms getting started, or maybe people have relied on referrals their entire life, and that's been all well and great. They've plucked all the low-hanging fruit. What is that? What do you tell a new firm who's maybe getting into paid ads? Like, what can they expect? What's a recommended budget? How quick do they spend that budget? Like, paid ads can be scary for a lot of firms, right? Maybe they've been burned in the past. Maybe they've just never done paid ads. What's your recommendation to a firm who's either thinking about paid ads or, okay, I'm ready to do something, but how much do I spend?
Yeah, and I think it all starts with kind of what I was talking about just a little earlier there in regards to who are your clients? Who are you trying to, attract? What problems do they have that you're trying to solve? Because I think a lot of generalist type firms or just, businesses in general who just don't really understand or at least don't have their ideal client nailed down yet go into like a marketing strategy like Facebook ads or Google ads, for example, with just like very generic type of messaging or looking at very generic keywords. And so I would say the first thing to do is, really like who are you targeting? When you understand that, understand what their problems are, how are they like searching online, and, tap into that messaging and tap into, that language that they're using, right? Because when you can highlight a specific problem that they're having that you solve, that is going to amplify, your ads, right? Because you're speaking directly to a problem that they're probably like typing in Google to solve, right? As opposed to having a generic message. Everyone, sorry, shouldn't say everyone, but there's a lot of firms out there who are just generalists and they just have a general message, which really doesn't really speak to anybody. They're just offering the same services as, the firm down the street. So I would say that's the first piece to it is just really dial in who you're trying to target, dial in what problems are you solving, and then let that lead your strategy. And then in regards to getting started, I mean, I'm obviously going to come from the approach of getting a professional, to start it and to let a professional or an agency look after those Google ads. However, if you do want to do it yourself, I do recommend it as well. It's definitely a good skill to have. It's good knowledge to have as well. And just, in regards to different types of marketing that you can do. But if you're starting out, essentially it's, you don't want to spend a whole lot. You want to like, put a little bit on the table, just see how things work, test out different messages, and then kind of see what clicks. And then if you've found a message or, have found maybe some keywords that are converting, then look at scaling up. As to, I would say like a good number to start out with, $500.
Okay.
Just to kind of give you like, a base, that'll give you a little bit of traffic. Hopefully, if your messaging is, resonating with them. That being said, Google Ads, you know, it is starting to get a little bit more expensive because there's just a lot more bidding going on, and it's essentially just, the demand of it that they're able, to increase those. But it all really depends too on like where are you trying to target. So, start with like, I guess a number that's comfortable to you, but also that isn't like a whole lot where, if the first campaign that you start doesn't really generate anything, you're not like stressing out because you wasted all that money. And so if you are just starting out, obviously it's just like any new skill, you just have to get your feet wet. And I don't want to say dabble in it, but like, just really test what works, how it actually works, how the platform's going to perform for you, and how to structure those ads for,
Yeah.
results.
Yeah, cool. I mean, what I'm hearing as well is, or something that's probably really important to add on there to what you just shared, $500 in New York City or in Manhattan for testing
Mhm.
is going to be wildly different from
Yeah.
$500, say, in the Midwest somewhere in a more, um, not as populated area. The other thing that I've always kind of encouraged clients to think about is who are they trying to bring on and for what service, and be willing to spend basically break even on acquiring a new client. I think there's too many firms who they try to get into marketing or they try to run some marketing on their own. I'm sure you've seen this where it's like, hey, I got $500 and I want that $10,000 a month CFO client. That's great. It's awesome to have wishes, but that's not the way the world works. So at least that's how we've always run our ads, knowing,
Mhm.
okay, we're going to bring on a client for 3K a month. Well, we have to be ready to put our money where our mouth is and spend 3 grand, at least in the first month, to acquire that client. And then we can always refine and make it extremely more profitable. So a lot of good points in there. And the other piece I'll add on, and if you have some to add to it, is the piece about hiring an expert. I think that's oftentimes a little bit overlooked when it comes to marketing. It's a really good skill to have as a business owner, you said. But if you put yourself in the shoes of the business owner coming to you for, say, tax planning advice, well, what are you going to tell that person? Hey, you can go out and do it on your own. You might get okay results, but I can almost guarantee you it's going to be way better if you just work with me as the professional. So that's always kind of a narrative I try to lean in with clients as well. Marketing's great. It's great to know how to, save on your own taxes, but and oftentimes you get a significantly higher ROI by choosing to work with a professional. I'm not sure if you have anything else to add to that, but a lot of points to what you said just kind of they were stirring up those ideas for me. I just wanted to add.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I think you bring up a good point, and yes, you're absolutely right. Sure, you can play around with Google Ads, you can learn how to do SEO yourself, and I recommend it just to give yourself context and just an understanding of how it works. But at the end of the day, like you know, these agencies and, these pros, they've been doing it for years upon years, right? And so they know it works, they know how to structure stuff properly. And so, they're going to be able to get you faster results than you just, testing and going through trial and error. And it's no different than if I came to my accountant and be like, and was like, I don't understand, these financials. This is what I want to do. Can you help me understand this and help me put a plan into place so that I'm able to, solve this financial challenge or whatever that is, right? They're the experts. They studied all that stuff. As a business owner, my top priorities, I don't know what yours are, but it's essentially what are the levers that are going to drive more revenue to the business? So those are, the top priorities for myself. And so the time spent outside of that is essentially, not where I want to be, right? And so, it's essentially, paying for somebody's time so that you can free yourself up, manage your business, manage your clients, create the best client experience as possible. So that's just my take on going down the expert route and really hiring somebody who is able to speed that up.
Yeah. You're going to pay with time or you're going to pay with money.
Yeah.
And I think it's just asking yourself probably at the current position you're in, what do you have more of? Do you have more time to try to learn it yourself, or do you have more money to just have an expert come in and get you the result probably 10x faster? So some really good stuff there. Jeremy, what's your thoughts on kind of the direction where AI is going, or even with Google? Like they just had the release the other day of the new video AI with Google. How are you looking at this as far as strategy goes for your clients? How are you thinking about either using that for clients? How are you consulting them on how to use it? Do you have some thoughts on that? Because when I'm seeing these videos now, like it's insane what what AI is producing. It's quite scary actually. So obviously there's really good ways to use it. And from a marketing perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts on either, yeah, for the client or like just in general, your thoughts on how you can use it to grow your business.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's the $1 million question right now because technology and with AI coming to the forefront and just a lot of disruption going on within the marketing space. Actually, not even just the marketing space, but like in all industries, people are kind of running around like, where's everything going? I don't know. It's, technology's evolving so fast. I don't know how to keep up with it all. But if we look at Google specifically, and let's just look at Google search as it pertains to search engine optimization. Obviously, search engine optimization is changing because of AI. And then with AI overviews and other stuff that Google's implementing, the organic search rankings are getting pushed down. That said, if you look at it from a local SEO standpoint, local SEO is still very, very relevant. In fact, it's if you're a local business and you don't have a business profile, a Google business profile set up, and you're not looking at or even considering doing local search engine optimization, I think you are leaving yourself behind the eight ball because there's so much opportunity that still lies in Google search. That being said, if you look at it from a more macro level, um, doing SEO nationally, there's, obviously it's a little harder and you're going to have huge corporations, with the resources to outspend you to get those number one leads. That said, I'm not saying it doesn't work, but you really have to get strategic in how you're looking at your keywords and which keywords you are targeting. But that said, AI is definitely changing the way that we do marketing. I talk about Google a lot just because they obviously are the big players in the search space. I was reading the latest figures. They've actually dropped just a little bit, but very slightly. I think they've dropped their market share by like 3%. So there's somewhere like 85, 87% of the entire search
Yeah,
market,
yeah.
right?
It's still
Which is
massive.
huge. There's going to be some changes, I think, coming down because Google essentially is going through this antitrust stuff right now with the US government. And so no one's really too sure what's going to happen. There's been talks about Google having to maybe piece some of its business off and just changing the way they do things. That said, I think this is going to present some opportunities for other search engines like Bing, Yahoo. If you look at it from like more of a privacy focused search engine like DuckDuckGo or Brave, for example, I think there's going to be opportunities there because a lot of people haven't truly tapped into those search engines as much. And then also too, if you look at it from like, generative AI search, like Perplexity, even ChatGPT or any of the LLMs that are out there, that's where a lot of people are flocking to as well for information. So it's not just about, getting yourself visible on Google, but it's how can you get yourself visible across the whole like um, online space, really,
Yeah.
right? And so, that's with video, that's with social, obviously, having really high quality content as a part of that. So when somebody searches, whether it's on Google or Bing or even Perplexity, because you have your stuff really optimized for that, you can be found on more places than just, Google alone. So I think that's where things are going. But like I said, AI is really disrupting a lot of things and it's really accelerating where things are headed. And I think, you know, when you think, okay, AI is here right now, you start putting a plan into place based on where AI is at. Then literally like a few months later, AI is, evolved even more. So now you got to adjust your strategy. So I think there's a lot of like tweaking and tinkering and kind of going back and forth right now, trying to figure out what that all looks like. So a lot of testing and refining. But at the end of the day, I really think, going back to just like the fundamentals of marketing and positioning yourself is really what's going to, have the biggest impact. So like, you know, focusing on a very specific client, figuring out how you can solve those problems, and then, just putting your messaging out into the world on how you solve those problems. And I think, that part will never change, and that part's always going to be relevant.
Okay, two questions for you here before we wrap up. One, you
Sure.
mentioned a couple times, testing out different keywords, different key phrases, thinking about what is my end client typing in to potentially find me, kind of like reverse engineering it. What strategies do you have for someone who wanted to go do that on their own as a starting point? Like how do they know what people might be searching? I know there's a couple different resources out there. I want to hear your answer, but for someone to get started, they're like, okay, Jeremy said I got to use some keywords and test it out. But like what keywords should people be using? What should they think about? Where could they potentially find some of the answers?
Yeah, and so I think that's a good question. I mean, obviously you can go, use AI like ChatGPT and just get like a broad understanding of kind of, what keywords your types of clients might be using. I would say one thing to keep in mind is, forget about like the very broad keywords like accounting firm, and whatever city, right? You can still use that for your local search, but refine it into like how would your clients, based on their business and like what they're trying to do, how would they use search and put yourself into your client's shoes? If you were looking for your services, how would you type that into Google, right? Like if let's just use cash flow management, for example, like instead of like, oh, who's the best for cash flow management? Um, sure, that probably gonna work. That you can probably rank for that, but if you refine it to like, I'm a small business with cash flow issues, who can I get to help me solve this, right? So thinking about it, like how would you talk to somebody, right? And using like that phrasing, and now with AI search, I don't know about you, but if I'm on like Perplexity or even just like Chat GPT, for example, and I'm trying to ask a question, I'm asking a question like I'm just talking to my best friend, and I'm not like being general or like um, find me information on this, but it's just like if I was in this situation, how would I, you know, um, how could I solve this problem based on my resources and what I have? So really start to focus on more of a conversational approach to it, using keywords and like more long tail keywords, um, is really kind of where you're probably going to get the most bang for your buck, so to speak. I hope I answered that. I felt like it was a little bit kind of scattered there, but
No, I think
essentially
it's good. Sorry, go
just
ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there at the
yeah,
end.
no, no. I was just gonna say, just focus on like more conversational type of, phrases people would use. And there's also like a number of different tools that you can use, like to help you with your keyword research. There's like SEMrush, there's Uber Suggest, there's also Ahrefs. I mean, if you Google SEO tools or keyword research tools, you'll get pages upon pages of them. But essentially, what those help you do is like if you put in a very specific keyword, it'll tell you one, how difficult it would be to rank for that keyword, how many, what's the search volume for that. But then it'll also provide you other like keywords that are relevant to that, may not have a lot of competition that you can start ranking for and getting more results based on that. So I would definitely recommend, looking at using an SEO tool or even like a keyword research tool.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's really good because then, I mean, you jump in, even kind of blending what you're saying, jump into ChatGPT. Hey, what are the
Yeah.
best SEO tools to help me find what I'm looking for?
Mhm.
And you kind of reverse engineer it or think, all right, even if I'm just looking for a plumber or whatever it is, what am I typing in? Then just replace the niche with
Yeah,
yours. I mean, that could
totally.
potentially also work. So great stuff there. Last question for you, Jeremy. I've been asking this to a lot of guests as of late. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I've ever received. You're putting me on the spot here. I've
That's
received a
okay.
lot of,
Take your time.
good pieces of advice, but one that comes to mind, I'm gonna have to think about this. Hopefully you can edit out the time gap here for me to think, but the best piece of advice I've ever received. Um, More maybe it's coming from like being a business owner in general, but it's like business is the battle of attrition, right? Because a lot of people have these great ideas, they start implementing it, they think because they have a business, you know, business is going to automatically flow to them. Then they realize that, building a business takes time, you need to be patient, and that, if you're not making, millions of dollars within the first 6 months of starting your business, a lot of people quit, where it's just like understanding that it's a battle of attrition. And the longer you stay at it, just like anything, the more people will drop off. That clears the way for less competition. I think, it just goes back just to anything in general. If you want something bad enough, you'll be motivated within, and, you just have to stay the course. I think that's the biggest thing.
I love it. Just keep pushing. Just keep going.
Totally.
Yeah,
No matter
that's
how
so good.
hard things get, just keep pushing because,
Yeah.
it is really hard, being a business owner. I'm sure you can relate as all the other business owners out there, but there's days where you just feel like you're putting in so much effort, nothing's happening. and you get deflated, and then all of a sudden you get a really big win and you're kind of back at like, yeah, this is amazing, this is awesome again, and then you have a little lull. So it's like a whole bunch of ebbs and flows. Stay the course, just stay positive, just commit to what you're doing, and things usually work out as they should.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jeremy Estey from Amber Sky Marketing. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Honestly, for coming on, sharing your time. It was an absolute pleasure meeting you in Utah. I hope we get to see each other again at an event real soon or something that's going on, because I know we're on the other sides of the country right now. How can people get in touch with you if they want to continue the conversation? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm super active on LinkedIn. I'm posting every day, if not twice a day sometimes. You can also just send me an email, hello@amberskymarketing.com. I'm checking my emails daily, so you can reach out to me that way as well.
Cool. I'll make sure those get put in the show notes for you. Jeremy, again, thank you so much for coming on. Ton of value. I highly recommend everyone get in touch with you. You have so much to share when it comes to PPC and just the strategy behind Google and local search. Yeah, amazing conversation. Thanks again.
Hey, thanks for having me on, James. Looking forward to listening to your future episodes.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of CFO Chronicles, the secrets behind success. I hope you found value in today's conversation. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please rate and review the show. It helps others discover the insights we share here. Second, if you're ready to take your business to the next level and attract the high-end clients you deserve, head over to accountingleadsnow.com or click the link in the show notes to book your strategy call. It's time to position yourself as the advisor your clients need. And don't forget, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to stay up to date on what's happening in the world of accounting and financial growth. We've got exciting topics coming up, so stay tuned for the next episode of CFO Chronicles. Until then, keep pushing forward. Your growth is just one strategic move away.
Thanks for listening to CFO Chronicles, the secrets behind success. We hope today's episode provided valuable strategies to help you attract more high-paying clients. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share with fellow professionals. Connect with us on LinkedIn and leave a review or comment to join the conversation. Your feedback helps us bring you the best insights in finance and marketing. Until next time, keep striving for success and unlocking your business's potential.